Hey everybody, welcome to the Midweek Check-In. You guys, we have so much to talk about today. First of all, just this past Sunday, Pastor Drew started us in a new sermon series called Habakkuk. We have talked about that for the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, Pastor Drew was here with me, and then a week ago, I mentioned it again. If you didn't get a chance to tune in to that message, go over to our website, and under the resources tab at the top, you'll see that it'll drop down, and right there will be sermons. Click on that, and it'll be right at the very top. You want to tune into this awesome message. Also, don't forget the resources that are down below, that are posted down below. There's going to be another one for chapter 2 of Habakkuk for this week, so make sure you tune into that. And speaking of that resource, as I was listening to that, and as I was tuning into our Bible project reading for this week, which by the way, we are heading into the book of Romans, I realized that Habakkuk and Romans have something in common. Paul actually quotes Habakkuk 2 in the book of Romans. And here's the part that he talks about. He actually says this. It's from Habakkuk 2, chapter 4. It says this. The beginning starts, see, he is puffed up, his designs are not upright. But here's the part that Paul quotes. But the righteous will live by faith. Now, what Habakkuk is talking about here in the book, actually, that's God's voice we hear in verse 4, chapter 2. But originally, it starts out how Habakkuk, and we'll see this in chapter 1, and again, if you go back and listen to the sermon, you see how Habakkuk is actually really wrestling with a struggle. And we actually really want to be trusting God in difficult times, and that's kind of what this book is all about. Habakkuk is wrestling with that. He's trying to trust God in the midst of not understanding what is going on. He's basically crying out and saying, where are you? Why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you saving my people? But God reassures him that he is indeed working and moving. Now, Paul quotes this also in the book of Romans because he wants to remind us the righteous will live by faith in God. That ultimately it's not about our timing or what our expectations are, but we will be right in our standing based on our faith in God and his timing and his promises. And in the book of Habakkuk 2, chapter 2, where we're at, God actually gives Habakkuk a promise. We start here where he talks about, he's replying to Habakkuk and he says, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. And then he goes in and God's talking about people who are getting really frustrated and not waiting on God. And he says, see, he is puffed up. His desires are not upright, but the righteous will live by his faith. Faith in God. It's really hard for us to wait on God and his timing. It's hard for us to be patient in the midst of suffering and confusion and doubt and fear. We can actually take those things to him. While we wait, we can take those things to him. You know, Pastor Drew talked about this last Sunday, but we get to lament. We actually get to celebrate great things and we get to lament the bad things. But there's this time kind of in between, like what do we do with what we're dealing with while we're waiting for God to make a move, to do something, because he always is working and he always is moving. He promises us that. But in that time of waiting, we get to come before him and surrender our hearts and our minds before him. This actually ties in really well too to just this last Friday, we had a message in Eden about solitude. And I spoke on that and I talked about how ultimately when we get alone with God, our awareness of him increases. And so does our awareness of ourselves and what's really going on inside of us. So this week I encourage you to get alone with the Lord. And if you are struggling with the waiting place, where's God? What's he doing? How's he going to respond? And you're frustrated or you're confused or you're scared or you're sad, spend time before him and offer that to him. And if for those of you who are reading in the Bible Project, continue doing that as well, you guys. Again, we've just started the book of Romans. That's kind of why I like to tie these two together. And you'll see that also when you look at the reference that is posted below that supports our sermon series for the week. Again, the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, is what we're going to be learning about on Sunday. That's what the link is to. And of course, like I said, you can go to the book of Romans too. So many things to talk about, so many references. And don't forget to spend that alone time with him and pour out what you're dealing with while you're in the waiting. We love you guys and we are praying for you. We'll see you next week.